Welcome back to another Rhize demo video. In this video, we're going to use the Rhize API to explore a manufacturing job according to a standard model. For a quick preliminary, let's take a look at this diagram. While every manufacturing process differs, some commonalities hold across all operations. First, the business orders that something is made. Then, the plant performs work to make that thing. And in the process, it follows a set of definitions using the available resources at hand. No part of this operation is separable from the other, so to accurately model it, you must use a structure that represents manufacturing as a graph, with edges and nodes. In this video, we're going to zoom in on one node, the job response, and see what data we can pull out. So let me go ahead and jump to my GraphQL Explorer. As you can see, this Explorer is empty. So we are going to build a query to get a job response. So I'm going to type in query job response. Now I'm going to start building my query. All right, so first let me click on this plus. Each time we click on a plus, we're going to add an argument to pass to the call or a field to return from the API. So the first argument and only argument, I'm going to get a filter. I happen to know that the job response I want begins with YT batch 100, but I actually do not remember what the entire ID is, so I'm gonna use this regular expression filter to get just the beginning. Let's go back and get some fields to return. So the first field that I want to return is actually just the job response ID because I know what it begins with, but I can't remember the full thing. All right, so here we go. We've got this job response YT batch 100 JRFC make frosting. The next thing to do, let's see what the ID of the job order was associated with it. So I'm going to click on job order and then ID. Okay, so now we've got the order and we've got the response. As you can see, we can pull a lot more data out of order, but we're going to focus on building out all of the data that's associated directly with job response. So one very important property of a job response are the resource actuals. These actuals tell you the who, what, when, why, and how of a job. They tell you what resources really went into the making of this product. So the first one that I'm going to look at and that I want to see is what material went into this. So I'm going to get the material actual. We're going to want an ID, but we don't need to stop at just the ID. We could also get the material definition. This would be something that may define exactly all types of material for this part. We could also get the material use. That's going to tell us how this material was used, of course, and the quantity is always good to have. Now let's go ahead and build out our queries a little more. Cool, so you can see the job response is make frosting. Now let's take a look at what this material actual is. We're going to have peanut butter, butter, confectioner sugar, cookie frosting. So this looks like all the material that actually went into making this job to make frosting. As you can see, we have quantity and this material is either consumed or produced. Okay, so if you notice, all of these quantities don't have a unit, so that's a little confusing. Let's go ahead and get the unit of measure too. Also, I see this material actual doesn't have an associated material definition. While this association isn't necessary, it's a good practice to have. So I'll tell my team of integrators to add that, but for now, let's just remove the query for this property. I do happen to know that this data model works with the concept of material classes, so let's see what material class this material belongs to. So now we've got the ID, the quantity, its unit of measure, how this material was used because it might be either consumed or produced, and the class that each material belongs to. But that's not the only actual that can belong to a job response. You can actually have many that pertain to a job response. If you're building out a track and trace or an electronic batch records in a pharmaceutical operation, these actuals are extremely important for your reporting. Let's go ahead and look at the personnel. I'm actually going to get the ID and we're going to get a specific version of the employee. So each employee might have specific certifications or something that they'll have different in terms of training. So each employee has, in some sense, a version. Each person has a version. We're going to go ahead and get their name and ID, and we're going to get this personnel actual. So as you can see, we've got Janet supervisor, employee sub 12. We've also got JB Bryant. JB Bryant looks like he was the handler here, and Janet obviously is the supervisor. So now we've got the who, the personnel, the what, the material. Let's look at the how, that's the equipment. So let's go ahead and find, you guessed it, the equipment actual. Now I'm gonna get the ID, and I'm gonna piece together some other interesting information we can get from equipment. So stuff like the equipment version, which will have its own ID. And class. And I think all the equipment has class in this data model. And then also we will get hierarchy scope. Hierarchy scope is an arbitrary hierarchy that we use to group things. So this is when you want maximum flexibility in the model. So now we've got our equipment actual, and we can see what equipment was involved here in the kitchen. Within the kitchen, we had the line mixer from the equipment class mixers. The other one is from the equipment class kitchens. There is no hierarchy scope here, so let's go ahead and just remove that. Hierarchy scope is an optional property, as are almost all of these properties. So we've looked a lot into the resource actuals, but let's go ahead and take a look at some of the definitions. The definition is going to be in the work master and the work directive. This is going to be something like your master recipe and the version of your master recipe that you're using for this specific operation. So we're going to ask for the work directive ID. I'm just keeping it simple by just asking for the ID. We could pull in other stuff here, but let's also look and try to get the master ID as well. If we wanted to, we could also say what material does this work master specify. Why not? Let's do that. It's probably going to be very similar to the material that's actually used. Otherwise, something's probably gone seriously wrong in this production operation. So now we've got our work directive. This is the version from our work master, FC make frosting. I guess FC maybe stands for fresh cookies. So as you can see, we have the material specifications for this work master, which are peanut butter, butter, confectioner's sugar, and cookie. That's just exactly what went into the actual. So it looks like our personnel did their job. Who are those personnel? Oh yeah, those personnel are Janet Supervisor and JB Bryant. Thanks for doing your job. Now, if you look, this is almost a complete report for a track and trace. In fact, in certain operations, this might be enough for a track and trace. The other thing that you might want to be looking at is you might look at all the properties and go, wow, that's a lot of properties. How can I remember all of this? How could I use all of this? The answer is you don't need to remember or use all of it. You apply the model as you need it and no more. We aim for simplicity here. Okay, now if you're interested and you want to see a little bit more about how this all works, we've got some pretty cool diagrams on our documentation. You can just type in ISA-95 diagrams or use the sidebar, however you prefer, and you can take a look at these diagrams that we've got. Here's one explaining this definition, demand result, with some resource specifications, and we have some other ones that really get into the nitty-gritty of what these equipment and material models are. Thanks for watching.